Shalom. If you like superhero and action and fantasy films, this is your summer. We've got Thor, Green Lantern, the X-Men. We even have a new film by Steven Spielberg and J.J. Abrams coming out soon called Super 8, and of course Captain America. And if you like that genre of film, you'll love this week's Haftarah describing the birth of Shimshon HaGibor, the mighty Samson, which was chosen to parallel this week's Torah portion, Nasso, because in Nasso we learn about the institution of the Nazir, the one who tries to be a bit more pious and holy than he has to be by giving up wine and hard drink, giving up cutting his hair, and avoiding any physical contact with death. Except that Shimshon, the Nazir in the book of Judges, does not take upon himself these obligations. They are imposed upon him even before he's born, when the angel who tells his mother, who is longing to become a mother, that she will give birth, but that she has to raise her child as a Nazir. And so what makes Shimshon important is not his personal midot, his character, his good qualities, but rather the fact that it was decided for him that he would be a Nazir. So what do we learn about Shimshon? That he has great physical prowess as a result of his following this path of the Nazir. We learn that Shimshon can slay a lion barehanded. We learn that Shimshon is capable of killing 30 men during a time of great rage following his betrayal by his first wife, a Philistine. And that's even before the story with Delilah, when she cuts his hair and leaves him powerless, ultimately ending with Shimshon pulling down the temple on top of him and all the other Philistines, his enemies. So Shimshon is a great hero, but not because of his piety. He's a hero despite his piety. What we learned about Shimshon is that he has a miraculous birth, that he's trained in the ways of a particular religious community, that he strays from the path at some point, and that he ultimately redeems himself by defeating his enemies, although he pays the price with his own life. Those motifs may be familiar to us from stories of other heroes. Joseph Campbell describes them as an integral part of the journey of the hero. And so if we tweak the details just a little bit, we could come up with films like Thor and even the Star Wars series. After all, Darth Vader starts off as Anakin Skywalker, who ultimately pays the price with his life when he realizes that he needs to be redeemed from his inhumane ways of the past many years. Shimshon speaks to us not because he's great entertainment, but because he touches that part of the Jewish soul that was in need of encouragement. During many centuries of persecution and suffering, Shimshon is one of the few heroes in Jewish tradition who is heroic in a physical way. Shimshon symbolized for Jews throughout Jewish history the possibility of standing up for oneself and fighting back and winning. Didn't happen too often in Jewish history. And so in that respect, Shimshon is unique. And the story was so powerful that it's been retold in a variety of different formats, including the 1949 film starring Victor Mature, and even a very popular novel written by the great Zionist thinker Ze'ev way back in the 1930s. In this particular version of the Shimshon story, Jabotinsky portrays Shimshon as not just being physically adept, but understanding that more than anything, the Jew needs to be able to stand up for himself and to fight back. And he inserts into Shimshon's mouth a very famous speech about iron. "Shall I give our people a message from you?" Samson thought for a while and then said slowly, the first word is iron. They must get iron. They must give everything they have for iron. There's silver and wheat, oil and wine and flocks, even their wives and daughters, all for iron. There is nothing in the world more valuable than iron. Well, that's consistent with Jabotinsky's militant views of how Jews needed to stand up for themselves whenever attacked, whether talking about pogroms in Eastern Europe or settling the land of Israel. So Shimshon could have been turned into another Thor if Jabotinsky were to pen the movie. But the message of the story of Shimshon HaGibor, the mighty Samson, goes beyond just being a physically adept super being. Shimshon has a message that is typical of all messages that we find in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible. And the message is that those who follow God's ways will be rewarded. That ultimately we find a way to redeem ourselves when we've done wrong, and we can earn God's support, God's acceptance, God's forgiveness even. And so, whether it's Darth Vader repenting at the end of his life, or Shimshon HaGevir pulling down the temple, the Philistine temple all around him and all around his enemies, the message we're meant to walk away with, and the reason that the story of Shimshon was canonized, is because we need to learn, like the Nazir, that God has teachings for us that are going to enrich our lives, that will lead to us having God's blessings in our lives if only we are prepared to accept God's will and listen to God's voice. Shabbat Shalom.
Madre, cuando